Welcome to the Real Autism Podcast. Real as in relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions for a better quality of life. Join your host, Alicia Gaucher Page, for some real conversations. Sponsored by J. Cole Autism Coaching.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Real Autism Podcast, where we talk about relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions. And I am sitting here today with Mr. Austin Moore. This is going to be a good one. I've been looking forward to this. Welcome
Hey,
to the
Alicia.
show, Austin. How are you?
I'm doing good, Alicia. Thanks for the invite and having me on.
No problem. No problem. Well, let's jump right in. I want to talk a little bit about your background because you have a very interesting background on how you got here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what we want to know about Austin.
Sure. So I born and raised here in Georgia. I grew up in Gwinnett County, Snellville, Georgia. So I am pretty local to the state and love, as you can tell, I got my Braves, my Georgia. I'm a very big sports fan, pop culture, all that good stuff. But as an 18-year-old, I was needing just a part-time job. And a friend of mine was working with a family who had an autistic child. He was 6 at the time, and they needed more therapists for their home ABA behavioral therapy. And they kind of ran things out of their home like a business almost. It was kind of nice. And so I just kind of learned on the job. It was kind of very play induced, and again, I would learn certain techniques from some of our certified friends, and then just kind of built on skills naturally. But I also got the opportunity to be his personal aide to school. He had an adapted schedule, so he would go, for an example, 9:30 to a 1:30 kind of schedule where he would go for a few things and lunch and interact. But I was, or someone else was there on with him pretty much that whole time while he was there. Um, and so I got to see the ins and outs of third grade all the way through 10th grade with him. For 11 years, I worked with my buddy and got to see many modalities tried. So again, we did ABA almost that entire time throughout high school, and many other therapies, sound therapy or music therapy, water therapy, light therapy, all the therapies you can line up. They tried them, and I was fortunate enough to kind of be there, almost like they became second family as I was putting myself through school. So. My mom was a nurse, so I thought I kind of wanted to be a doctor, but my grades weren't terrible, but they like I had to be average. So a lot of my advisors were pretty straightforward and like, you're doing okay, but realistically, your competition's a little up here, and and I saw the writing on the wall, but I kept trying, I kept chugging along, taking classes here, taking classes there, and at the time, my girlfriend, now my wife. She was moving to Alpharetta, Georgia, kind of had a career as she's an SLP herself, speech pathology. So we crossed paths with a lot of kids, or I should say, case studies. We kind of exchanged case studies that way. And so she was coming back to Alpharetta where she grew up with her family. And I again still had this job with my buddy. And so I kind of just thought I need a career, found this physician recruiting job out of nowhere through my wife, and thought, all right, I'm just going to try this career thing. So I had to say goodbye to my buddy as like a part-time job, as I called it, not quits on school, but just put on hold for a second to figure out what I wanted to do. And then 3.5 years later, I'm still doing that job, but getting paid okay. But man, the job was not fun. I was stereotypical making, 60 calls a day, cold calls to hospitals for physician recruiting. And it was the grind. And I'm not very good at being denied of like, I'm very personable, but I don't like, if somebody tells me, no, I'm good, I'm like, okay, thank you, sir. I'll move on. Instead of my headhunters are like, no, call them back. You tell them,
Right.
it's just not my personality. And so I learned pretty quick, like I'm good at managing, I think, but I'm not good at headhunting. So, and my company kind of saw that as well. But at this time, this was 2014, 15, I had stayed in touch with my friends, and I'd realized I haven't said his name till now, Reese Blankenship, but over at Recliff, our friends over at Peachtree Corners, and that story will come in down the road here in a second. Um, so I worked all this time with Reese. Well, his mom had stayed in touch because, again, like the second family to me, and she says, you got to come see this spelling thing we're trying. You won't believe it. Like Reese is really doing well. And I thought, okay, sure. And I almost did not go to that workshop to see him spell. And my wife was the one who said, you might not see him for a while. You should go. And that day changed my life because when I saw
Always knows best. That's not
exactly
related to this podcast, but if you're
so,
listening, listen to your
so
wife.
true. So true. So when that happened, um, I was a mess. I was crying. I mean, he was like my brother. I'd seen him try so many things, and when he spoke his first words, letter to letter, so eloquently, I was just like, I knew you were in there. I knew it. And so I was a believer. Second one, first second to where I was like, what is going on? Like, how do we miss this? It seems so simple. How does he know so much already? This and that. And again, he was 19 when he found his voice, and I'd known him since he was 6. So that kind of jolted me. Went back to my recruiting job for just a few more months, and it was February of 2015 is when I separated from that job. And his mom was just like, just come until you figure out what you want to do, because I wasn't sold on immediately jumping back into this, right? And so his mom again talked me into it of coming and learning, and I thought, yeah, let me just see what's going on until I figure out what I want to do. And then from then on, I was sold. I started. He was openly communicating a few months later with me, and I kind of just saw what we had been missing, and then through word of mouth alone, just hanging out with other families, so all of a sudden other families, hey, would you want to work with my son? And I thought, oh, okay. And it just slow trickled into a career. So then I got certified in Soma RPM, which we can go into the modalities here, but that's a version of spelling. The original version that I learned under Soma, she kind of created a lot of this after facilitated communication. And then there's also Spelling to Communicate, which I trained under Elizabeth Vossler in Virginia. Very good program up there that Elizabeth has put together. And you might hear that as S2C. A lot of people just say S2C. There's also the Spellers Method, which is based, I believe, out of Tampa in or California. But they just opened up a branch in Woodstock, in fact, for spellers. So there's 3 kind of brands, if you will, that you could go and get trained in, all highly recommended. It's just a matter of budget, time, and what you think. So, um, with all that, I got trained in 2 of those 3 things and started working with more and more clients. And during that time, Reese had been putting together this business plan while I was working with him, and he would say things to his mom as well. We'd compare notes, and he started saying he wants to put together a community center where he and his friends, once they graduate from high school, they have a place to go learn, work out specifically. He really wanted the exercise to be important because of the rise in obesity, especially in the ASD. Um, um, the whole community that, like, the obesity has been an issue. So we saw that the exercise was going to be an important part, and the body dysregulation was key. So we had to put that game plan together for Reese, because his mom always famously says that they would have done the same thing for his sisters. So why deny him that dream? And so of course I'd been through thick and thin with them, and I said, well, you're not doing this without me. So I jumped on board with them on consulting and helping them along the way, getting things set up for them to really hit the ground running when the doors open in 2018. And so again, 2015 is when I got certified. So I've been practicing spelling for 10 years now, but been with autism since 2001. Um, and so in 2023, I got back on the road to see as an independent contractor, to see clients in their house. So I'm still on the board of our nonprofit at Recliff Community, which is we raise money for scholarships and community outings for those in the community. But the day to day, I'm no longer at Recliff, but I'm still part of that family. But yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell. My new company is just More Opportunities. My last name, Moore, More Opportunities. So that's where I'm at there, Alicia.
That's a good story. And I think the thing to consider there is, as you're going through life, paying attention to what you enjoy or your situation or scenario that you're in, because you never know where that's going to land you from a career standpoint. So it sounds like you're in a career that you really love and enjoy. That makes a difference versus just going to a job every day, I would think.
Sure. now it's taken a lot of their encouragement and their words to kind of keep going too. And because at certain points of my life, they were there to kind of tell me like, this is what you were meant to do, in a confusing time. So it was definitely, I think it was the timing of God Almighty that kind of put me here. So it's just a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit, because you did mention as you were talking about how you got to this point, the different modalities like the
Yes.
still to communicate. Which ones, like what's the difference? Which ones do you specialize in? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. And again, people can look these up for themselves, but this is kind of my experience. I learned from Soma, who's written many books on this. She's got books galore on her rapid prompting method, which is RPM. As you know, a lot of our friends are pretty much all of them need prompting all the time. So this technique is based on you starting to teach them the gross motor of pointing to letters on letterboards. You start out with big targets at first, big letters, and then you start shrinking down to eventually would be the biggest goal of independent typing, which is kind of like the paramount of communication for these non-speakers. And so some have figured out with the gross motor is much easier than what you and I are doing using the hundreds of muscles we have around here. And so Soma is very, very much focused on the RPM, I should say. I can tell that Soma is very, very much getting that motor intact with the spelling, and she uses lessons to to focus that pointing to certain letters to where you start learning certain things about your speller, and so then you start building trust and start building towards open communication. Where I think Elizabeth Vossler kind of deviates from Soma is that she very much was all about pushing the limits of our communicators, like letting them attend college and whatnot, advocating in very different ways. And she comes from it from a speech pathology aspect, so she's very knowledgeable. Her class is very much like a college level class, which is I liked a lot because it was I need structure. And so Elizabeth's always been very structured, which again, I emulate very much Elizabeth's style. Soma is just, she's her own thing. And I encourage everyone to kind of read her original stuff and keep up with her because she just, when you see her work, she's brilliant. And so yeah, I know Elizabeth has really been Vossler. That is, she's been really working on getting research done, especially the eye tracking. She's really done great work up there in Virginia. Her program is a little bit more for the people like myself that need that regimen. So you can get certified in both Soma, which is a little bit you got to sign up in advance. It's more geared toward parents a little bit, but then Elizabeth has had very very high success with practitioners that are also the SLPs, OTs, to where a lot of our practitioners out in the field can, use their other specialties to kind of mix and match what's going on with the spelling. Now the speller's method down at Tampa, I can't speak a ton about, although they're coming from it more of an OT, so they're using more OT practices with the spelling as well, purposeful movement and all that. But they're all great programs, and I'm sure there's more out there that I'm not mentioning, but those are the ones that I'm very familiar with, and they're all great. I can't speak much on facilitated communication, only that is kind of a different style than what I typically practice. But with that said, when I've met a few friends that utilize that, and I've kind of learned on the job, support it as best I can. But my specialty is kind of the style of spelling to communicate with a wireless keyboard and our clients typing out their thoughts onto the keyboard. Did that make sense as I was going through some of
Yeah,
those?
that
Okay,
it definitely made sense. And I'm gonna dig a little deeper just in terms of
sure.
your world. And when you get a client and you do that initial eval, like how does that work? Like how do you establish the baseline, and what metrics, I guess you can say, that's my little corporate term. What more metrics are you using to, I guess, track progress and success with clients?
Um,
Because I know it differs, and I
sure.
mean, you really can't put a timeline on it, I would think, because every
Mm.
individual is different. So how do you How do you track success when you're doing this?
Okay, that's a great question. So when I first meet someone, I always like to, which I'll do with you in Coleman, which is I like to do a meet and greet and just I like to see you in, if not your environment of the house, out in the community, or just where it's somewhere where your student's going to be comfortable. And then I approach every client the same way of depending on what age they are. I'll keep that number in my head as I walk in, approach them and the parent. I'll just observe as I talk to the parent, and kind of see which kind of body type I'm working with. I can kind of categorize some of them, which, not to, and it's just a way my brain works in that if I have a person that walks around a lot, or I have a person that can sit still for a little bit, I have to categorize them like, okay, I got to throw some of this stuff out the window, right out the way. When I meet somebody that's running around and needs certain physical attention, all that, or just they need to do body stems or body loops out and about, I can kind of shelve a little bit right away. Vice versa, if I have someone who's sitting at the table and just ready to go, it might just be kind of saying some verbal loops or some scripts. I can kind of tell, okay, I won't need to be, say, following this person around the room and trying to spell and do do some juggling there. So when I first meet them, I look at the body I'm working with. Look at if they're doing verbal loops, if they're looking me in the eye, if they're looking mom and dad in the eye, if they're being a little nervous. It's all body language. And so, but I walk in the door, say I'm meeting Coleman can you remind me, is he 14, 15?
15.
Okay, so like if I walk in when I see Coleman, I'm gonna walk in, hey Coleman, talk to him like a freshman in high school, right? And so I'm not gonna assume he knows everything, but I'm also not gonna talk to him like a 5-year-old. And so I will do that, especially with my adults that I meet for the first time. I just flat out tell them, I know that you've probably not been believed in that you're in there, but I believe that you are, and my job is to be here to help you communicate and use this as a tool for the rest of your life to be able to communicate with whoever is willing to be your partner, your communication partner, which can be anybody. Um, so I'm very honest in that it can be done, but it's a formula that has been proven over and over again that people have to follow for it to kind of work. And so I try to go into these homes and families and plant the flag of you're on the right path. Even if I'm not the practitioner you'll work with for the rest of your life, you're on the right path. So keep this going. You found it. Let's keep going. Anything you've done in the past, if you want to keep going, that's fine. But I'm telling you, I've seen this change so many lives. And it's, again, not a therapy to try. It's a way of life. And so when I start talking to them like that, I think they start giving me this little side eye kind of, like, and when I start seeing my autistic friends giving me the side eye, I'm like, all right, they're listening, they're paying attention. And then when I get either parents that are a little taken back at first because of the way I talk to them, or they flat out say, "Oh, I like how you talk to them." But I do have some parents are like, "Oh, I'm not sure they're listening." I'm like, "I promise they are." It's kind of like I don't want to step on any toes when I'm meeting people, but I'm just like, just from my experience, I assume that he is listening, they are listening, and I'm just going to talk to them like they are. Even if their body's going crazy, I might lower my voice and slow it down, but I'm still going to talk to them age appropriate or presumed competent, which is my number one goal, at least whenever I meet anyone. So then when it comes to the spelling, if we can get to the table, I got some paper. I've got an educational lesson for someone. Typically, the first session, I like to just tell them a few things about myself, how long I've been spelling, what spelling is about. That I'm an ally of autism kind of thing, and just the trick. I learned this from Elizabeth is you typically spell my name with them on the letterboards to get them comfortable. One, with my name, spelling it together. Here's an easy one we can start with. I'll just tell them, let's spell my name. So a dictation, I'm telling you what to spell. They know what letter they need is A's first. I'll even write it down because some of our people are on the spectrum love to watch me write and love to listen to the pencil and love to write themselves. And so the writing is like this activity you can share where it's you're focusing on the letters you're going to spell together by writing them down. a little red light goes on. They're saying, "Oh, he's spelling it together. I should pay attention to this." And this comes into the presuming competence. I know you're listening. We're writing it down together. Here's the word we're going to spell. Spell my name. So again, I hold up a letterboard, and the first letter is A. I know it's A. He knows it's A. So I'm coaching my person to that letter. Um, so what I do from there is I kind of evaluate what's the first movement that person makes if the A is in the top left corner of my board, um, is that first movement towards that letter, or is it a different direction? If it's towards that letter, it's like, yes, he's got it, but he might go and maybe give me the B instead of the A. So it's my job as a coach that once he starts heading in that direction, yes, 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 move, move, move. And so you're giving him or her the gas to go get that letter. And then all that stuff starts to dance around the letterboards as you spell together. And slowly over time, as their confidence builds, as their movements get better, um, then that's when things just start meshing, and you kind of understand that. All right, then your prompts fade, and over time, it becomes almost like a silent session. They're typing away.
I mean, to your point, it's like typing, right? Like my dad was a business teacher. And so he had that's when we had typewriters, telling
Right.
on my age. And you had the little board and you type stuff and how many words can you type per minute. And
Yes.
over time, like if you were to ask me, where is the letter on the keyboard, I would really have to think about it because my fingers were so used to just going there. After so long, I was just using muscle memory. Like right now, if I said, where's the letter P on the keyboard, I would really struggle thinking about where it is, but my
Yeah.
finger would go right to it.
Right.
It's pretty
Yeah.
weird. It's pretty weird.
So yeah, those are the things. The purposeful direction on the letterboards is kind of what I look for. And then if say before we even get to the spelling, we're having issues with the body, and even I catch myself as we're talking, some slouching or
Yeah, me too.
I get a lot of people that rest their arm on their body kind of thing
Totally.
or on the
Right.
table. Right. And so a lot of I call it the Mr. Miyagi in me, and that I'll always like, oh, sit up straight, or, oh, right here. I'll just tap their elbow, kind of lift it up. I call it the floating elbow, because if they're on their rib cage or anything, a chair or anything, the spelling is not as successful because they're limited in their direction. So I always, during my sessions, you'll hear me saying, "Oh, float that elbow." So I want the elbow up and free floating, so they can get to every single letter. And compared to what I call like almost like a dinosaur arm thing, where you're very limited. So they might still be accurate, but they can't reach certain rows and whatnot. Um, so yeah, body work has to be well. If they're a mover, so they can't sit still for longer than a few seconds, I'll either get the letter and they move around, or if they just are having a really tough day, I'll grab my letterboard and follow them around the room and just say, hey, you got to give me one letter, then move. So they'll poke a letter, and then I'll let them move around, and then they'll come back, poke a letter, and to me it doesn't matter how long it takes. It's a success, as long as we're having a good time. And a lot of my parents, that's the biggest one, is if they have a mover, they're so nervous for me. And I'm like, no, let them walk. They're fine. I promise. They're listening, and they'll come back when they're ready. And sure enough, just about every time they do. And it's the fun expressions from the parents going, oh, okay, that was cool. He came and sat by himself. I'm like, I swear, it's the presuming confidence. Once you start talking to them the right way, they're like, all right, I'll try it out. And then they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. I see what we're doing. And then they're sitting for 15 minutes straight. And the parents are telling me after 35, 40 minutes, I've never seen them sit so well. And it's like, all right, cool. And so when I hear that continuously over and over again with over 100 people I've done spelling with, when those themes keep building, obviously something's right. So, um, yeah, it's one of those reinforcing things for me when I hear similar things in different ways from parents, and the cool reactions I get from, oh, all right, that was nice. It's very rewarding, I guess.
Thank you for tuning in to the Real Autism Podcast with Alicia Gaucher Page. We'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode: J. Cole Autism Coaching, helping caregivers navigate to a better quality of life; AGP Organizational Coaching, helping people develop effective strategies, systems, and solutions to organize information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or just visit us at jcoleadvocacy.com.